You are either MAGA or you're not. If you claim to be MAGA and then all of the sudden you're going to hang up your MAGA hat, take down your Trump flag, then you don't understand MAGA and you were never MAGA, ever. We have all witnessed, because we were all part of it, of the greatest political comebacks of all time. Of all time. Those of us from the beginning who stood behind President Trump from the moment he came down the golden escalator to now understand where we are and what it took to get here. Almost a jailed president. Before that, a rigged election. Before that, his first presidency, the DC swamp. Those that knew he wasn't a politician, he wasn't a DC guy, that could infiltrate, take advantage, and derail as much as they can. The mainstream media, part of it, still part of it to this day. They tried to kill him. They tried to jail him. They tried to bankrupt him. And here we are. Donald J. Trump is the 47th president of the United States. The biggest, again, most victorious political comeback of all time. We won the presidency. We won the House. We won the Senate. We won swing states, all of them. MAGA won demographics in this country that nobody thought were possible. It blew minds of everyone, including myself. We won in places nobody thought were winnable for President Trump or Republicans. Proved them wrong. And then somehow, after President Trump took office and has delivered on campaign promises, we have the detractors that have used President Trump, who claimed to be MAGA, claimed to be Republicans, completely turn their backs on a man who they successfully grifted off of, who they successfully made names for themselves because of Donald Trump. And you know who I'm talking about. The Marjorie Taylor Greens. Even Tucker Carlson, who was at Fox and left Fox and went on his own. He went on his own and he grifted off of the MAGA base because he knew he had to in order to succeed with the Tucker Carlson network. Some of the most influential voices, or that what people think are the most influential voices that are supposed to be on our side, instead of actually speaking about all of the things that President Trump has done, is doing, is trying to do with an unfortunately uncooperative Republican Senate and even House members at times, they're not talking about the good things. All they're doing is going at each other, seeing who could get the most clicks and views, and not unifying to make sure we protect President Trump's presidency. And the big reason is because everyone has an axe to grind. Someone didn't get what they wanted. Somebody got pushed out of direct access of President Trump, of access that they had through the campaign. Well, he's president now, and there are different priorities. Not taking phone calls whenever somebody calls. Feelings were hurt, backs were turned, and now the detraction And the MAGA bashing begins from some of these people. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene wouldn't be where she is today without President Trump. She successfully grifted off of his name and beyond. And now where is she? Well, she was corrupted by Kevin McCarthy and his donors. And those people that saw her as someone who can turn the Republican establishment base and maybe people from MAGA against President Trump, against his presidency, make no mistake, the establishment Republican infrastructure is still there. The Mitch McConnell and his donors, the Kevin McCarthy and his donors, Paul Ryan and his donors, George W. Bush and his donors, Mike Pence and his donors, Thomas Massie and his donors, Marjorie Taylor Greene and her donors, and beyond. You can name them. Name some more in the comments. They're all pooling together to destroy MAGA. That's what they want to do, because in their heads, if they destroy MAGA, they destroy all influence President Trump has after he's out of office. They can destroy his endorsements. They don't want President Trump framing the next administration with his endorsement. If that is J.D. Vance, these people who I just mentioned don't want J.D. Vance as president of the United States. They want someone like Nikki Haley. They want someone like Ron DeSantis, someone they can control. They want President Trump out of politics. They want President Trump's influence to be non-existent. Most of them are upset that President Trump didn't meet his demise in Butler, Pennsylvania. That's a fact. And right now, as I'm speaking to you about this, what are the Democrats doing? The Democrats are doing exactly what they always do when they lose. They're fundraising, they're organizing, and they are organizing. You see all of the paid protesters around the country. Well, that's Democrats organizing. And they want to see the fall of MAGA. They want to see the fall of the Republican Party. They want to see those who say they're MAGA walking away from MAGA, because that's an incentive for them to get their people out to vote. When they hear or they see a Republican on social media say, "Why are we voting? Why are we voting?" It doesn't make sense to go and vote in the midterm elections. They see that. They want that. As a matter of fact, they even have organized bot farms to make it seem like it's more prevalent for Republicans not wanting to come out and vote in the midterms. Now, if you stay home as a Republican for the midterm election, you are supporting the Democrat in your district. If you came out in support of President Trump and his agenda, not once, not twice, but 3 times, and you have a thought in your mind of sitting home during the midterm election, you are throwing that all away. You are working to actually destroy Donald Trump's presidency, his legacy, MAGA, and everything we worked for to hand it back to the Democrats. Now, there are Republicans out there, again, who I just named, the Kevin McCarthys, the Mitch McConnells, the Mike Pences, the George W. Bush, Paul Ryan, Marjorie Taylor Greene, that are literally working, and that's just the tip of it, that are literally working with their donors to make sure the Republicans lose the House of Representatives. We're not going to lose the Senate. We're not losing the Senate. The math doesn't work to lose the Senate for Republicans. But their attitude is if they can lose the House and turn some of the Republican-held seats that are technically purple in purple districts, there's probably about 17 or 18 of them. Literally, the House of Representatives, that election for the Republicans to hold even a slim majority comes down to about 17, 18, maybe 20 purple seats that need to be protected by Republicans, which means Republicans in those districts have to come out and vote in force to make sure Republicans hold the gavel. If Republicans lose the House, President Trump's presidency is legislatively over, because now it'll be a shit show. Hakeem Jeffries will have the gavel, and they will have President Trump and every cabinet member in the House chamber facing impeachment charges. The Senate, the Republican-held Senate, their job is over. They can just sit there and say, well, we're not going to have any legislation come through the House for Republicans in favor of Donald Trump to send to his desk for law. We just have to stay here to make sure that we are voting down all of the legislation that Democrat House members are now sending to the Senate. And then that's it. Government, it basically is just, there's no point. President Trump's not going to get impeached and convicted in the Senate. He'll probably get impeached, probably, without a doubt in the House. Again, they'll probably a hat trick, maybe even 4 times, who knows? And that's all you'll see. Again, vulnerable districts between like 13 and 18 seats around the country that are considered purple. That's what it comes down to. People talking about the blue wave, even Republicans on social media timelines, specifically X. I'm like, I see these accounts. They've always been Republican accounts. And then they're like, well, we're going to lose the midterms. It's going to be a blue wave in both the House and the Senate. Obviously, people don't understand how the districts work and are just posting on social media. And thank God social media doesn't win elections. That's a fact. But again, it's about 17 Republican seats that are considered purple that it comes down to. We're going to win the midterms. The problem is the detracting social media influencers, I call them, the fake MAGA influencers that want to do nothing but sell you doom and dispense black pills. You have to pay attention, again, to those who claim to be MAGA, who are advocating actively for Republicans not to vote in the election because it's not worth it. Is Donald Trump's presidency worth it for you? And all of the naysayers that are saying he's not delivering on his campaign promises, he is. Go back and read the agenda and see what he's done and what he's trying to do, and the speed bumps that are put up in front of him, or the walls that are being put in front of him. The problem we have is a Republican Senate and a leader, John Thune, that is not a leader. He's a cunt. He's not leading. He's not whipping the votes to make sure we get the Save America Act passed. If we pass the Save America Act in a Republican Senate, the talk of losing the midterms would pretty much go away. That is what everybody wants to see. That is a campaign promise that President Trump has delivered on. It's there. The SAVE Act is there. It's waiting to come back to his desk. You can blame Donald Trump if it never went this far. His bill, his agenda is there. It's Congress. Yes, it's a problem. But if you're not going to come out and make sure that we don't have the numbers to have a successful second half of a Trump presidency, then what are we doing? Why did we all come out and vote overwhelmingly and get all of the victories that we did? The swing states, the Senate, the House. We have to do this. Midterm election is just as important as the presidential election. You know, during the campaign, when you hear like this is the final battle, I always said to myself, it's really not the final battle. The final battle is won at the end of President Trump's successful presidency. He stays a successful president if we make sure his presidency is protected by holding the gavel for Republicans. I mean, think about what we went through over a Biden presidency. This whole America First talk and what it means is another bullshit narrative. Because if you can't understand that geopolitics, what happens around the globe, does not directly affect America First, then you don't understand politics. You don't understand anything. And when people are sitting there saying, well, all of this infighting on the right between influencers and podcasters, the podcast bros and commentators, when they're saying it needs to stop, I can agree with that to a point, but we have a problem with influencers and podcast bros and commentators that just want to black pill and not use their platforms for the positive, for making sure that the people out there working on the ground are supported with voter registration. To tell people how, like I am right now, and how important it is to vote in the midterm elections. No, they're propping up some Republican that wants to totally gut and kill MAGA because of an agenda or because they're getting paid, because they don't want to see J.D. Vance as the president. They don't want to see Donald Trump having the victories that we've had because of usually self-serving reasons. The messaging of the GOP, in my opinion, is completely off. And this has nothing to do with President Trump, because the messaging that comes out of the administration, whether it's social media, press conferences, statements from the president himself communicating with the American people, are all on point for the most part. They can brush up some things communication-wise throughout the departments, the agencies, as far as the historic wins and victories and success of policies. That can always be better. You remember under Joe Biden, when you had House and Senate delegations would travel down to the border with cameras everywhere to show how bad the situation is at the border, hold press conferences all the time. Look, the border's open. Look at all these people. Oh my God, they're dying in the Rio Grande. All of that. Remember that, right? The focus on the broken open border under Joe Biden. And then on day one of a Trump presidency, the border is closed. Record breaking, the lowest record breaking of border crossings in, it seems, American history, when they're reporting zero month after month. Why aren't the same Republican House members and Senate members and anyone else within the GOP going down there at the border to showcase and to show how secure the border is and why it's so secure? That is an unbelievably massive win. That is the top issue of why President Trump won his tremendous victory, was the border. Why aren't members of the press included in mass deportation operations and covering them, doing ride-alongs to show? We see very little of that. And it is happening. Those people that tell you mass deportations are canceled and that other black pill narrative, it's complete bullshit. You know who it's coming from. There is only one true influencer in the MAGA movement. One. And that is the guy that started it, President Donald J. Trump. That's the only one. Everyone else who is spewing this nonsense, that's exactly what it is. But in reference to the GOP doing more for positive messaging going into the midterm elections. We all know how the political world works. It's money, it's messaging, and then it's getting the vote out. And the only way you're getting the vote out is to trump all of the negative messaging out there from Democrats and black pill dispensing Republicans, you notice I use air quotes, is to pump out the positives, because there is so much positive to be messaging about. And that's where the GOP, the RNC, always seems to fall short. And it's like by design, because Republicans love to play victim. They love to play victim because a lot of these politicians who are Republicans love to fundraise off playing victim. You know, I'm running for re-election, or I'm running for election in this district, and I'm running against a Democrat that wants to lock you down, increase taxes, allow amnesty for millions of illegal aliens and allow them to vote. And we're over here like, all right, well, the SAVE Act is there, so we want to clean up the voting rolls. We want to have voter ID for federal elections. And it's stalled because of a Republican-held Senate. And people think that the solution is to allow Democrats to take control. Because the Democrats take control, inflation goes up from whatever it is, 2.3 or 4% that it's been holding at, back up to 9%. The border opens, which then increases inflation more. Deportations completely stop. I just wish people would focus on the bigger picture. And yes, we have influencers, we have podcasters, we have commentators that are selling doom and gloom. And if you think infighting is other people calling them out, I call them out constantly. I've been calling them out here on YouTube. I'm calling them out over on the show, Steak for Breakfast. If you haven't checked out Steak for Breakfast podcast, Spotify, Apple, any way you get your podcasts, make sure you download and check us out. We have to call them out. They are what I consider, and a lot of people consider, fake MAGA. Those are the people that are serving themselves, whether it's for monetization, they might be getting paid by a political action committee or donors to spread certain messaging against MAGA. You know, this may be an unpopular opinion. You may not like it. MAGA is a part of the Republican Party, whether you like it or not. And Republicans as a whole are not going to allow Democrats to take control. See, when you see things on YouTube and when you see things on social media, that doesn't always compute. Most of the time, it doesn't compute at all or equate to what's happening in the real world. So I tell people all the time, and a lot of people get mad at me because you get stuck in this social media bubble of what's going on. X is the new news, which is fine. I get most of my news from X, but I also know how to filter through the nonsense because there's a lot of nonsense there. A lot of nonsense. Go out into your community, your workplace, church, organizations you belong to, your neighbors, your family, and ask them about some of these people who are on X pushing don't vote and all of the other nonsense. And most of these people have no idea who they are. Most of these people have no idea in the real world who a Laura Loomer is or a Nick Fuentes is. Like, two, in my opinion, who are just two losers, by the way, who, again, grift in their own senses. If anyone thinks Laura Loomer actually sits there and does investigative journalisming with all of the stories she breaks, well, then you're out of your mind, because she doesn't. She sits there and gets everything fed to her and reads off a teleprompter on her show on Rumble and gets paid a lot of money to do it by a lot of wealthy people. Just remember that. Most of them are like that. Our podcast crowd, and I'm part of it, but we have people in this podcaster bro crowd that want to do nothing but black pill. And a lot of them are doing it because they're getting paid to do it. There's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of dark money. I have been offered by various social media groups and pages and organizations that if I would post consistently for a certain amount of time against an issue or something that even goes against President Trump, that supposedly as conservatives doing it, that I could get paid, hundreds of dollars here or a couple $1,000s here when the campaign's over. And I'm not going to do that because that's not my word. It's not how I feel. But money talks, and a lot of people are out there with their hands out for it. Again, I'll say it. There's not a single person out there in the real world that are sitting there thinking, what I really need to do right now in this moment is watch my favorite podcasters go to war with each other. No, we don't want that. The problem is that a lot of podcasters out there who are doing nothing but the black pilling are not doing anything positive to encourage Republicans to keep control of the government and to prevent disgusting, America-hating, open border-loving Democrats to take control of it. And that in my opinion, is the biggest problem. So again, you have to pay attention to those who claim to be MAGA, who are actively advocating for Republicans to not vote so that Republicans lose the midterms. And people are like, why would any Republican want Republicans to lose midterms? Because to them, the House races that come every 2 years, I'm telling you, I've heard this in conversation. Like people like Kevin McCarthy, who's out of Congress now, and Paul Ryan, who's out of Congress now, Mitch McConnell's barely alive and walking around like a zombie in the Senate, Mike Pence, George Bush, now Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others. They know how the system works. They know if they allow, if they're okay with the Republicans losing the midterms, because see, here's the deal. Donald Trump's a Republican. The House is held by Republicans. So it's historic that in the midterms, at least the House will flip historically to the opposite party that the president is in. So they have that advantage in their heads. There are other advantages that 2028 comes around. They can have influence over who the nominee is going to be with donors and endorsements as they're destroying Donald Trump's legacy, and say, we'll just win the House again in 2028 along with the White House of the candidate of our choice who we're going to back with money and influence. And then they get to bring the establishment back in as they're destroying MAGA, because that's what they want. They see MAGA as Donald Trump, and MAGA is so bigger than Donald Trump. Because when Donald Trump's not in politics, when Donald Trump is long gone, MAGA will still be here. And those that are saying, well, MAGA, it's not America first, MAGA this, MAGA that, they are all doing it for ulterior motives. They're not doing it because they had an epiphany that they think MAGA is bad and that Donald Trump is bad. It's always about money. These are the same people that never supported President Trump and only again used his name to make a name for themselves, to make money for themselves, to gain power, to gain followings, to monetize. That's all it's about. It's a tremendous grift. They want a Republican midterm loss. Establishment Republicans want a Republican midterm loss so they can fully blame President Trump on the loss and the lack of legislation under the second half of his term to say that he was a do-nothing president, that everything he campaigned on failed, in the hopes of destroying his endorsement for 2028, the presidential nominee. They want to kill MAGA. And I'm sure you already can guess. I've said a lot of the names who are in on that. There are a lot of them. Sound off in the comments. You probably know more of them who I didn't mention. Pay attention to those conservative and Republican and MAGA, even in some cases, influencers who are not using their tremendous platforms of 1 million here, 2 million there, 5 million here to encourage voting in the midterms to protect President Trump's presidency and instead tell you every day why Republicans are going to lose, because you see a lot of that too. The GOP will lose the midterms because blah, 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 blah. How about talk about why Republicans will win and use your platforms to influence people to vote to protect President Trump's presidency? If you're going to openly say that you support President Trump and have for the last decade he's been in politics, and then turn around and say, well, there's no sense in voting. The GOP is going to lose. The GOP is going to lose. Republicans are going to lose. Then you don't truly support President Trump, because you wouldn't be saying that, and you would be highly supportive of a Republican win and make sure you're using your platform for that to happen so that, again, President Trump's presidency isn't destroyed by Democrats controlling the House. So then what? All the podcast bros get to say, you see, we told you so, and then make a shit ton more money with the doom and gloom business models of the last 2 years of a Trump presidency going into 2028, because that's all that this is about. Steve Bannon built his infrastructure and business model off of doom and gloom, and that's all they sell over there. That's where a lot of influencers, they just sell their doom and gloom. It's only for money. Listen, Donald J. Trump is the leader of MAGA. He started it. And he's the only one anyone should be listening to as far as where MAGA is going. Because anyone telling you that MAGA is cracked, MAGA is dead, they don't believe it, or they're absolute 100% liberals cosplaying as Republicans. It's just a fact. We are seeing things happen that no other president could make happen, that wanted to make happen. What's happening right now in Iran is exactly what every other president in our adult lifetime wanted to happen. Well, with the exception of Barack Obama and Joe Biden, because they funded them. What's happening there isn't for Israel. What's happening there is to ensure global safety from horrific terrorists that have been chanting and actually death to America and actually killing Americans for almost 50 years, among other people around the world. Because if you have global safety, then you have the ability to do unbelievable things as far as global trade. If everyone's at the table, America first only comes if the world isn't on fire everywhere else. That's a fact. You have to understand. If you don't understand geopolitics, this has nothing to do with the Jews. This has nothing to do with Muslims who want to assimilate to American values, and there are plenty of them. This comes down to the America-hating Islam, Iranian Islam terrorist organizations and their proxies that want nothing but war and death to America. And they're willing to keep that fight up for the next 100 years if that means they can infiltrate the West in any way possible. And they're doing it. And we have a president now with support from a lot of other Republicans that want to put a stop to it. The problem is nobody wanted to do it. And Donald Trump said, hold my Diet Coke. That's a fact. But no matter how you lay it out, you're still going to have the detractors. This is just my piece. I don't care if you agree with me or disagree with me. If you love it or you hate it, you can tell me. It doesn't matter to me because I'm going to keep doing it. I understand how a lot of things work. Maybe I see things differently. I'm not getting paid to do this. I'm not making any money doing this. This channel is not even monetized. Maybe it will be. I don't know. I make my living the honest way. I don't have to get on social media and look to see what's trending as far as shitting all over MAGA and President Donald Trump to try to monetize for a few bucks on social media and YouTube. I don't have to do that. Apparently, there are some that love to do it. Hey, listen, I'm just going to leave it like this. If we lose the midterms, we will most likely never gain control of the House again. At some point when the math works and there's enough Republicans to lose their seats in the Senate, maybe in 2028, the Democrats can take that. The Democrats can take the White House. And then we can all just sit on social media and doom post about it until they suspend all of our accounts and then just start targeting us and our families financially, legally, criminally, any way possible, because that's what'll happen. That's exactly what'll happen. The next time Democrats gain control of the United States government will make Joe Biden's term look like Disneyland. That's a guarantee. That's not selling doom and gloom. That's giving you a dose of reality. So that's it. Listen, go check out the podcast, Steak for Breakfast podcast, Apple, Spotify, any way you download your podcast. Check out me and Roan. We put out shows every Tuesday and Friday, 4 episodes a week. And yeah, listen, MAGA hat stays on. Keep your head up and God bless America. See you on the next one.